Here, Mark just showed up, so we will call this meeting to order. We are here at the December 12th meeting of the Conservation and Forestry Committee. And basically just want to welcome everybody back. It's been a couple of months. One thing to talk about quickly is that the last meeting, procedurally speaking, that we had no secretary. Everything was entirely on Zoom, on the YouTube channel, so we do not have minutes for that meeting. Don't have anything to go over then today. And beyond that, moving on to basically the quickest and foremost, business to be tended to tonight is to elect a new chair for the committee. So after going back through, I've got a bunch of information here and I went through Robert's rules, and please correct me if anyone's finding this to be inconsistent. Robert's rules does say that we can have nominations. They can be self-nominations and no seconds are required, but I don't know exactly whom other than Andy and Mike had voiced some opinion earlier about possibly being interested. But procedurally speaking, again, if that's actually true, then Dave, I don't know whether if it means anything to you one way or the other.
Yeah.
To do what?
I believe that's true.
Okay, if that's the case, then I guess I'll just simply open up by saying that in conferring with Jen here tonight, the way that the selectmen are trying to get us back on schedule is to have everything come up for each June's meeting that we have, and then therefore the terms for the elections, they're hoping to have, they meaning selectmen and the town, are looking to have the terms of whatever internal officers, meaning the chair and or secretary, whoever would be inside of the committee, be call it July to July each year. So if we had the town meeting, new people come into the committee, you then have an election at the meeting thereafter, and you work through the next year. That way it's kind of refreshed each time.
I know COVID screwed that up for every committee.
For sure, yep. So having said that, that's where we are, and that's what we're looking at for this nomination and election. Andy, would you like to self-nominate, or is it better for procedure?
It makes no difference to me.
It doesn't to me either, other than for procedure.
Well,
So
actually, what you should do is call for any nominations, see if anybody will make the nomination.
okay, well,
If not-
well, again, that would be do we have any nominations for the position of chair up until June for chair of this committee?
Yes. Who's willing to do it?
Well, just before we start, I thought about it, since I emailed everybody yesterday, and I'm not interested in having the chairman position. Also, I think, to be fair, excuse me.
And we can also talk about whatever, well, if it's one person, then it's pretty straightforward, but, forgive me for asking the procedural question. Should it have been more than two, the question would be, I also am reading that it can be ballot or by show of hands or however
Yeah,
that
you
would
can
work.
do that, but normally, in this
But again, if there's one, then it's moot.
Usually a second, yeah, but I think he's gonna vote on it, because if he nominates himself.
No, for sure, you have to vote, but I'm just saying, is the procedure better to be done blind or not?
So this will be through July though, correct?
Correct, yeah. Well, again, the answer that Jen gave was, again, the June meeting will bring in new people, and the first meeting beyond the June town meeting would then re-elect
Right.
for the next year.
Yeah, so it'd be anything after the second week in June.
Right.
Yeah. So I guess for us, what you might want to do is, you're going to be taking nominations for chair, a secretary, what are you going to have for positions?
Well, for example, if Andy is the only one interested in the position, we'll work through the nomination. Mike is still fine because his term, in theory, would not be over until the June meeting.
Yeah,
So
but-
you wouldn't have to change that, but is that what you're getting at?
I think when you do an election, you should do everything right now.
Okay,
Redo the whole deal, it makes it all legit, and if you would continue on, someone make a motion, blah, da-da-da-da.
So do both regardless.
do it all.
It doesn't matter to me, whatever's the most.
Because the problem is, we haven't done any new ones for so long.
Okay.
So just do the new one now, now, you'll probably end up with the same result, no doubt. And then, after the June meeting, you do it again.
Yeah, and I was getting to that I was gonna
Okay,
resign
sorry,
as secretary, because I think it's only fair that if somebody else wants that position, I've been it for, 2 years now, and
No, if somebody on this committee decides to make a motion that they want you to do it, then there's no, it's committee's choice to have you do it.
yeah, I'm willing to let somebody else do it. But I think, you're right, I think we ought to at least do one at a time.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Well, again, I was just more, if it had been 2 people running for one position, then the question of blind or not blind or ballot.
That's why you kind of have to do them all, that way everybody's open for the position.
Gotcha.
And then after you get your chair, then you're gonna do the secretary, or I think that's pretty much the only 2 you're gonna do here.
Yeah, yep. Okay, well, having said that, do I hear a motion for a nomination?
I nominate Andy.
Second?
Okay, do we have a vote? All in favor? All against? We're good.
I don't vote, so.
You have to vote some way.
I'll vote.
Abstain, or?
I'll abstain, yeah.
Okay. Technically, you're the man now. Do you want me to do anything? You want to just keep following through with secretary then at this point?
Yeah,
So,
I'll nominate Michael Benjamin.
I second.
See if Kelly's interested.
Kelly can't speak right
Yeah,
now.
okay, but
Kelly is mute tonight, I'm sorry.
I'd rather not.
Either that or she's laughing on the other side.
Yeah,
of
I
the
bet she is too.
Well, I'd like to find out, again, coming up for a short period, working for a half of a year through June, if you need if you would like a self-nomination for secretary, I'm okay with that. I don't know if that has to be seconded. I don't know. Again, the way I'm understanding it is I can still hold the position, but I don't know whether or not that's kosher or not, as long as it's not,
Let's make it easy. I'll accept the nomination and,
Kind of looking at it, it's short-lived now, it's 5 or 6
right,
minutes.
it's just a short period
and
of
if
time, I get that.
next meeting Kelly shows an interest in being secretary, I'll resign and she can,
Okay,
There you go.
how's that?
Great idea.
I unfortunately cannot speak right now.
We'll talk later.
I'm giving Mike all of your secret and personal information, how he can hunt you down and make you become secretary later, nevertheless. Do we need a second to that? Did we have one? You have one,
I
right?
think, did you second that?
No, I didn't. I'll second it.
Who was first?
I made the nomination and Mark is seconding it.
All in favor?
Abstain.
Oh,
So from here on forward, the next thing that I had on the docket was to go over some of the information on the drafts of the definition for the town forester position. Andy, you want to pick up from there?
I sure will. So looking at the information that Steve had sent out, along with some of the information that I believe Jen had sent us, the rough draft is this the rough draft the selectmen put together?
Yeah, the script, just so that everyone knows, the one that we're looking at that has the scribbles on it is me actually forwarding some of the notes that I made on my copy. So if you're looking at that thinking that it's the selectmen,
Yeah,
that one that's written on is actually me. It's the only copy that I have.
what we did is we just put down some things that we thought we could include into this. So, yeah.
So you folks are basically looking for us to kind of discuss this, and you're looking for feedback from us?
Yeah, I mean, we figured it should be a committee affair to put this description together. And what we'd like to have you guys do is kind of go over this pick and pull it apart and kind of, put something together that you guys can present to us, that, you know, something we can, put forward.
So, just going over this, if we could number those items, those items on the selectmen's, just so that we can,
Yep,
so if we start with manage forest lands as number 1.
Yep. 2,
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Okay? And then if we could take Steve's and go through the same thing but use letters. So practice forestries by definition would be A, B, C, D, E, F. That way we can talk about them without,
Yep, getting confused. Yep.
I had some notes too, I will share with you guys, if you want to take one and pass it down.
yes, sir.
thank you. Okay.
Do we want to go down through the towns first? Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and just give quick, info on some of my chicken scratchings on the sides of them and see if that can bring mine and this one together somehow, but we'll move forward with it that way. What I had done is that my concern over what was put out on the 1 through 13 list was that these are very much tasks that foresters do, but it's not necessarily broad enough to be considered a forester's job description in the sense that not all of those things are done on all jobs. Every landowner is different, every piece of land is different, and it would be akin to telling the surgeon that his job description is to stitch someone up, or whatever it happens to be. It's very specific, it's not very broad. So what I tried to stick with was go through here, and I put check marks on number 1 and 2, talking about manage the forest lands for economic, recreational, and conservation purposes in accordance with local ordinances, and guide the select board, monitors forestry and conservation activities. Those are very much 30,000-foot view things of what a forester does, and very much in concert with the definition and job description of a forester. But the things from number 3, or certainly number 4 or 5 down, were very specific things, again, that may or may not come to pass on any given job. So part of what, if we get some feedback from Dave as well, is that the guidance of part of this is to give an idea what the forester also does underneath of his stipend, as opposed to something that may or may not come up in other regard later. Larger projects, anything like that. So we do need to keep in mind that if this description is somehow linked to the stipend itself, that there is some known break of where one thing stops and one begins. So that's why from 5 to 13 are very much different things, which are the labor-intensive, on-the-ground style practices which a forester does, and takes, you know, who knows how long of time depending upon the size of the project. So those sorts of things are things which I felt better to be brought about on a task-by-task or town meeting-by-town meeting request for services type of thing. They would come in front of town meeting. So again, 5 through 13 are all things that foresters do, but not necessarily broad enough so as to be considered the consulting that in fact is what happens when the town is looking for a forester to be on a committee and give advice toward things. So that's why I kind of had a line, so to speak, at number 4 and below as being pretty micro of a view, whereas the stuff above that was more major. And then omissions that I felt, which were pretty important toward, again, being a forester, is that I'm presuming that the town is going to want a forester to need to be licensed to do these things. So, again, if that's part of a job description, should be included in it. And those are the A through F scenarios that are outside of what the Society of American Foresters calls the definition of forestry. So I basically just looked that up straight out of a what is forestry, and then one could say something like, one who practices forestry, and if forestry is this, then one who practices forestry is a forester, so to speak. And then these things that are below are more specific, such as to say, I'm working specifically for a town, I'm working specifically on what projects, whether it be town lands or versus public lands or versus private lands, you know, all of these things that define, again, for whom, on what land, and in what capacity a forester is to do its job, if it's to be tied to a stipend, was the way that I looked at that. So I see these two as coming together, and then I haven't seen Andy's yet, so we can, you know, if you, whatever order or comments to be made toward that, if you think I'm off on a tangent or pointing in the wrong direction, by all means, let me know. And then we can, again, in however order Andy and the, you know, committee decides to talk that through.
Yeah.
However that would work.
So really, what we need to do with this, with even the job description, when we put forward, we got yours, there's gotta be a separation, like you said, between the stipend and actual being a hired forester. Nothing here has that yet, really, because, I mean, it's not discussing monetary, how the forester would be being paid or anything like that. So, that's something that we really ought to look at. I think that's pretty much, that's kind of a starting point, but backwards, because you gotta know what is the forester gonna do for the stipend, okay, which is, help advise this committie. You know, there's gonna be smaller tasks, I'm sure the town's gonna, you know, we're gonna need help with, but when it comes to an actual forest, you know, where there's gonna be tree removal on town forest land, that's where we need to break the difference, okay? Whether we're using our town forester, or we're going out to hire a town forester, if we're gonna do that, if we're gonna say, okay, no, we're just gonna go out to bid on a town forester, either way, he may put a bid in on it, but we have to have that break point.
Yeah, instead of calling it a town forester, call it a forester hired by the town. You know, so.
Well, but the problem is, we gotta call it the town forester, because at town meeting, in our ordinances, we have an actual town forester.
Okay.
So we would have to strike that from the, town meeting, you know, amend that, so that we could hire out the town forester. That we don't have a town forester, that we would have to go get a town forester.
I see what you're talking about. When I was looking at, you know, these two, and now just looking at Andy's real quick, my experiences have been a town forester advises, period.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a stipend for that.
Yeah.
So advise the planning board, the board of selectmen, this committee. That's what the town forester does. Anything beyond that, these tasks, or looking at yours really quick, those are tasks also that would be beyond the purview of the town forester. If you wanted to do one of these things or one of these things, then you would put out a request for.
So where you start is, okay, let's start with, what is his job as a town forester with this committee and with the selectmen in the town?
Right. So
Start there.
So you have 1 and 2, somewhat.
Yep.
And then you have Steve's, A through F. And I think A through F is kind of like the heading of the town forester job description. you know, that kind of lays it out. 1 and 2 gets into more detail, and then looking at Andy's real quick, you know, many of these take hours and hours and hours to do. And you can't expect anybody to work for a $300 stipend, so, you know, to do that thing.
No, I think really what we have to do, anything beyond the scope of what we originally have to make up for the,
Right.
for the, you know, town forester, which you're right, it should be just for the committee, the certain little town issues like, you know, somebody cut somewhere they shouldn't have or whatever, okay, something like that. But we, at the end of the day, I think the biggest thing was, how would the town forester, if hired to do the work, how is he gonna be compensated?
Right, and I think you could have language in the job description that
Yes.
says, anything beyond the scope of this job description
Either
would be
hourly-
agreed to, payment or whatever word you want to use,
Compensation.
compensation, right, would be decided between the town forester and the board of selectmen. If the town forester did not want to do that work, then you could put it out to bid, and the town forester then could advise on who to pick, depending on those.
So are the verbs we're looking for advising, consult? That's kind of what we're looking at, right?
Right.
I think when I looked at this, you know, did a research online as far as trying to find a town forester job description, there wasn't anything really to, you know, to just use as a template.
Right. I looked too.
Because we're kind of unique that we have a stipend position.
Right.
But a lot of the things that are here on the selectmen's first draft, and these items that I came across, they're all under forester positions, but I wouldn't expect a $500 stipend, an annual stipend, to encompass all of this work.
If you look
It's just not.
I looked at the city of Portland's job description for town arborist / forester. They're paid, you know, whatever they get paid, 60, 70, 80, $100,000 a year, and they do those.
Salary.
Salary, they
Yeah.
get paid a salary, and their job description includes these things. You know, a stipend position is just those two words, advises and consults.
Yeah.
Anything beyond that, you guys have to agree on the compensation.
Yeah, well, and, you know, what we can, you know, what we would, I'm not gonna speak for the other two, obviously, I can't do that, but, you know, to make it clean, you know, we just put something in there that, you know, if the town forester is hired for, you know, any work beyond this scope, to be hired at a hourly rate agreed upon by the select board and the forester.
Sure.
Something like that.
Right.
That way there,
And you
we don't
could-
have to worry about the, how many board feet are coming out of here, this and that, whether or not, and I think that opens it up better for the forester itself, especially if you're not just, because there's more than just cutting. Oh, yeah. It's the other stuff that you want to be compensated, that you'd want to be
Well,
compensated
it's
for.
essentially time.
Yeah,
is
it's
the idea, you know.
time. So, you know, that way there it keeps it clean, and it makes it so that everybody realizes you're getting what you pay for. The stipend itself, is just what you said, it was, you know, to advise and this and that, da, 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 da.
It's kind of like a retainer.
Yep.
You know, and if you wanted to, underneath everything, these things may be, the Board of Selectmen may hire a forester to do these things, like what Andy has submitted, 3 through 13, what you guys did. Those might be a list of possible things that you would compensate the forester for, outside of the stipend.
Yep. So you guys probably wanna start with the first part where you're talking about advise and da, 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 da.
Right?
Yeah, no, I'm on board with everything I'm hearing, it makes sense.
One other question that I have looking at this, and one thing that Steve has done historically is submitted a report for the, annual report. like an annual thing? Is that something that will come from the forester, or should it come from the conservation committee?
That's up to you guys. I mean, at the end of the day, he brings up a good point, because one thing that we've had lately, we've got committees now that want to start giving reports. And, you know, the finance committee, road committee, capital improvement committee, so, I'm sure I'm forgetting, so, you know,
School board.
cemetery, all that, you know, I'm trying to include everybody here. And, but it may be something where that should come through this committee. That way there, you know, you can be, you know, like everybody else, be able to submit to the town report. And if the town forester wants to do something separate, he can.
Right. Well, the only thing I've done so far is submitting the committee's report for work having been done, and everything else has just been reported here. So anything beyond that has not been reported directly to the town unless I've been asked.
Yeah.
But you're talking about putting a town book,
Right.
yeah. You know, 'cause I mean-
What you're talking about, Andy, is?
Yes, yeah.
Something that go in the town meeting?
Town's annual report that's put out in
Right.
June.
I mean, again, the annual report that I give is Jen calls me up and says, hey, what's the committee's report for the year? And you know, you get the thing that says what the committee has done, which of course includes what the forester has done through that time.
You could
But again,
probably
to what
include that
extent?
all, because, you know, being the foresters on the committee, it'd be a good thing to have the whole committee do that.
Right, well, and then again, in all reality, Forester's not making any move without the committee's approval to do anything, period, anyway, so it makes sense that it be from the committee.
Yep.
I have no issue with that.
I think we actually started this year, we talked this year about next year having the committees start giving more reports than they have. Used to be just department heads.
And for example, parts of what I have hoped to, you know, incorporate, and given now that COVID is hopefully passing us and we can get out together more often, is, you know, bringing reports back first to the committee and then to the town on, you know, each of the given town forests. I mean, in all reality, you know, something that I see that could be part of the stipend, and I would have no issue with, as long as the schedule didn't become too onerous, would be a quick report on, you know, conditions of the town forest, right? I mean, take a walk out there once a year and report back, you know, has there been trespassing, have there been, damage to the property, is there any health concerns? I mean, we may not have been on all of these pieces as regularly. So that would be something that if I were, for example, if I were being hired by a private person that says, Steve, we're gonna have you be the guy, can you keep your eyes on our property for us through time? Wouldn't necessarily have to be every year, but just based on town schedules, would make sense to have regular reports come in and put back to the committee, to the town through the committee on the condition of town lands, right? I mean, because that's what begets the question of, if there's a health concern, for example, on a given property, and then something comes up where the committee recommends work being done on the property to mitigate a disease, for example, that probably would have shown up in a report from the year before under a health concern or something. I'm just making up things as I go. But then it wouldn't be a surprise, or it wouldn't be like there's some, you know, anything nefarious going on behind a recommendation to do work if the year before a walk of a property showed a concern or something like that. Just thoughts that I'm having. So that goes toward like Mike's talking about it. If, you know, if you were a lawyer, you would have a lawyer on stipend for the town that you could ask advice from at any given point. And he has to know the rough idea of what your situation is.
Our health
So if
officer is
these
the
things
same
are-
way.
Sorry?
Our health officer,
Yep.
I don't think we've ever used our health officer, as far as I know.
Right.
Until COVID hit. And she was there for that one reason. You know, obviously, we're not nurses or doctors, so we, you know, we're going to somebody who is, and, that'd be the same idea with you. You know, any issues with the forest, we'd come to you for it. Yeah, that'd be part of your stipend.
So I would see that, and again, this is all, it's part of a stipend, it's part of what I would do for a town that I live in and hope to keep good relations with. I want to make sure that the town's forests are healthy, or whatever it happens to be.
So I guess to move this along so that we can get some sort of, idea here, I guess, do you guys want, I know I'm not supposed to be running the meeting.
Go ahead.
But here's the thing though, Dave, I mean, you guys have final authority over what we kick upstairs to you. So therefore,
This has been a really good, there's been a lot of good dialogue here. And I think at some point here, we got 1 through 13, A through E, and then Andy's, we start blending this to the point where, and then we start splitting, like we talked about before. And, so, the committee, if you guys started at the job of the forester first.
Okay, can I?
Yep.
I've been scribbling while you.
Okay, good.
I've tried to blend, and the language isn't perfect, but the town forester job description, number one, the town forester has to be licensed by the state of Maine. Consults and advises for and on behalf of the town. So he's working for you guys, for the town, not for, ABC logging company, only works on town land. If you want that different, or advises only on town land.
You know what? I don't know about that, because if we have a logging operation come into town and something goes awry, where a bunch of stuff's been cut that shouldn't have been cut, I think to the town, like the code officer has some questions.
I would be happy to do that, although, I am getting feedback, at the selectmen's meeting and beyond, from say Jen, for example, though. Remember that when we dropped our
Zoning.
external zoning forestry guidelines / rules and were re-adopted back into the state.
Yeah.
The state is now back in Acton with its foresters for enforcement.
Yeah, and then we went.
So having said that, so just take that under advisement in that.
I'd leave it
Yeah, I
as
forgot we changed all the logging stuff there, yeah.
town land. So the other thing is,
I mean, again, there's advising and I have eyes, but officially speaking, I wouldn't want to be one that would be called upon to.
here, I advise you to call the Maine Forest.
There you go. I like that.
Give me my $500.
Well, I mean, back to the original point of this was that I never accepted this stipended position as town forester in order to be the town tree cop, right? It's to just help educate people of what the rules are, how to abide by them, what is important and sustainable to do. But if it ever got to the enforcement level, A, now it would be the state, and then B, it would be code beyond that. Before I ever.
No, I know that, but we wouldn't want to make that phone call.
Right.
To the state if it didn't have to be made.
I
If we can
understand.
call and say,
Okay.
is this really a big deal? Is this something we should be making a phone call on?
Right.
You could advise us whether or not we should be doing
That's the advisement, right? Sorry.
Okay, so that, on town land, that bullet. And the next bullet would be, under consults and advises, the Forestry and Conservation Committee, the Board of Selectmen, the Planning Board, the Code Enforcement Officer. And that would cover
All of that.
those things that you were just talking about, advises and consults. The next bullet would be letter F, monitors and reports regularly on the health condition of the town-owned forest land. The next bullet would be advises that the town land is looking at what you guys did, number one. Okay? So we put that in there. And then number two would be another bullet. Monitors forestry and conservation activities to ensure activities. That might get a little tricky, but, that's something, what we were just talking about, if, there's some forest harvesting going on that doesn't look right. And then the next one would be number 4 of Andy's, attends planning board meetings as requested. And then, your annual report. to for the town meeting.
So would that, attends planning board meetings as required, requested?
I think I would change that myself to
Well, I'm,
attending planning board meetings.
well, that's
Has to
bordering
be.
very heavily on the enforcement part of it.
Well, and really, now that, I did this really quick.
Yeah, no.
But under consultants and advisors, we had planning, or I had planning board, that would cover that.
Yeah, but I think that would only be required if he's asked to be there by the planning board, so it doesn't make it look like he has to
Well,
be
that's
there.
kind of why I put on mine for and on behalf of the town, right? I mean, you could put that in it kind of, without being specific, would kind of cover all that.
Yeah.
Whether you want to be specific or not is entirely up to the group, yeah.
Anyway, that's what I just put together. And then underneath all of that would be anything beyond this job description. There would be discussions with some language, discussion with the Board of Selectmen on compensation for,
Yeah, and we can deal with that part ourselves, I believe. You know, the select
When and if
board,
the
we
time
can,
comes,
we can do that. You know,
But I think-
we can do we would want to do a policy.
Yeah.
That way there, it's, you know, it's signed, we already know what's happening, we don't want to come and do something where all of a sudden the job comes up, now we gotta figure it out.
Yeah.
I think that's something we could take care of on that end of it.
okay.
But-
But if it's in this job description,
Yeah.
you know, say Steve gets run over by a moose, he can no longer do the job, you know, you hire somebody else. I think it's clear in this job description what
His job is.
the job is, what the stipend is really
Covering, yeah.
covering.
Oh, that's a good idea.
So, some language on,
Type it up.
You're doing a good job, dude. Keep it coming.
is that, I mean, that's just throwing it out there as a starting point, and, it's just been my experiences with a bunch of different towns down east. You know, you gotta be clear, and when, like, on this one, the third one from the bottom, Andy,
Evaluate data on forest and.
prescribes replanting of trees and mitigation plans. I mean, I did a bunch of those, and, you know, they're not cheap. It takes a lot of time.
Yeah, we don't expect anybody to do anything that would, you know, we don't want people doing stuff for nothing, obviously.
Right,
To a
that's-
certain extent.
That's the challenge of what is covered by a stipend and what isn't.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot on 5 through 13 that obviously you wouldn't have a chance.
No.
And it shouldn't be expected either.
And some of those would never, ever, ever happen in the town of Acton.
Well, a good illustration of that would be that, and I'm not doing this anything dollar for dollar, and it's not a concern other than to just show you the scale of the things that we're talking about, is that, and I don't even remember right off what it is specifically, but I did the math at one point in time, and current forester subcontracted rates come in that the stipend is about a day and a half's time across the course of a year. So,
Nope,
You know,
nope,
so
and we know
just-
that. We do know that.
right, so, and again, so the idea behind it being, you know, for the good of the town and somewhat philanthropic, really does have some validity. It's not like, you know, there's, you know, mining of town business going on for the stipend money. But having said that, it is important to just make sure, just for policy, that we all know what is kosher to ask for and what's over and above and beyond, I guess.
So how do you want to do this? You want to kind of, you've already got that all jotted down anyways, correct?
Kind of.
Can you put that together and maybe email it to Jen? What you have? I mean, it doesn't have to be anything official, because they're gonna,
If you guys are gonna tinker on it a little bit from that point forward, or if, depending, I mean, again, I I haven't,
why don't you do this?
I haven't gleaned anything from that immediately makes my hair bristle up, but do we want to have it come out? I shave most of it up.
You don't want to
My
send it to
arm,
us
my
yet.
arm, Mike, sorry.
Because the whole point is you guys to send us your draft. So why don't you do this?
So what I'm
I would
getting at
advi- I would
is, do
advise you
want
to
it to
put
come
it together,
Yeah, bring it to us first.
bring it back to the next meeting. You're
And
gonna,
then
in
we'll
another couple
submit it
weeks or whatever, okay? And then vote on that, then send it to us.
All right.
So we got your recommendation. That way there, it's a full committee job and we haven't got our fingerprints on it yet.
Okay.
So just send it out to us.
So we're gonna set our date for our January meeting, and at that meeting, we'll vote as a committee, because we'll have it in front of us.
Yes.
And tinker with it if,
We'll polish it up then, and then I think our goal for the next meeting will be to have it ready to send. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it should be a motion and a vote, and that'll come back to us, we'll know what the vote is, and we'll look at it, and then, we don't wanna become a speed bump to you guys, give it to us and give it back, you know?
No,
Let you guys do your job.
and this would give Kelly a chance to
Right.
have her input into it
Yep.
also. Does
Exactly.
I'm all for it.
that make sense?
So pretty much, it's just going to be what's covered by the stipend position?
Yes. Do you want language in there about the stipend?
Well, I wouldn't. You mean like how much?
No, no, no.
Like I said, because that's usually a deal, the town is dealing with that, generally speaking. Year by year,
Yeah, yeah.
they tinker
No,
on that.
The wording of town forester is there already. The stipend's really nothing, because we can change the amounts of the stipend and whatever. The town forester is town forester, that's all we need to do is for the title. That'll cover that.
no, this is, anything. I'm just, hang on just a second. Any activities beyond the scope of this description, would be compensated. Something like, any activities beyond the scope of this description would be compensated.
By approval of the select board.
Right?
I mean, you can get crazy and say it was the approval of town meeting or whatever, but it would be through the select board anyways.
Right.
Because the town meeting, we'd have to put money forward and we would delegate it after the fact.
Right, right. I mean, we talked about on the town lot, one of the first things to do would be to run the boundary lines. And, you know, you can't do that on the stipend, so, you know, that would go to you guys, just as an example, that would go to you guys and gal, I guess.
So, what it would start with you guys, because you guys would say, okay, we've got a plan. We want to start work on this piece of property, this is our plan, we want to determine boundary lines.
Yeah,
Then my idea would be, fix the entrance for access, so it doesn't keep washing in the road. Okay.
figure out where the lot
I'm just
is.
joking around, but.
No, you're right.
Okay.
Access is huge.
Yeah, you know, but your job as a committee should be to put forward these ideas, okay? And,
What if there's a cost attached to them?
well, that's what I was just thinking, because, I mean, we don't give the committees power of spending, but at the same time, we have to have an idea of what kind of monies. You know what, the capital improvement just came forward with a spending thing, I guess you guys could too. Get an idea of what expenditures you believe you're gonna need, because the only way you guys are gonna move forward is if there's monies to work with.
Right.
Okay, we'll obviously be doing the expenditures, but you'd be doing the advisement.
Right.
Okay, so yeah. I don't know, we're off the rails there a little bit, trying to figure.
No, but
out
if down 2, 3, 4 months from now, we decide, okay, we want to do something out there, whether it's harvesting, whether it's educational, trail work, wildlife work, you gotta know where the boundary lines are, and you gotta have good access. So those two things, you know, that's,
The same idea with like Goat Hill,
Yeah.
same idea, you got a plan, except, you know, we have two parties working up there, you got Three Rivers Land Trust and us. You would be the second party, you'd be the ones giving the advisement.
Right.
And, putting forward some sort of idea what you think cost is gonna be, and, you know, at that point, what the committee would do is they would appoint somebody on the committee, make a motion, and have that person look at, you know, get some ideas about, well, we'd have to put, I don't know the survey would be under, something we'd wanna put out to bid, that's typically not a good idea, I don't think, but we would go over the logistics afterwards, you know, how that's all gonna work out.
I don't know,
We don't need to know all the answers tonight,
Yeah, no.
but we just have an idea what our process would be is the concept.
right.
We'd really like to have the committee work on all that stuff and bring it to us. We'll put whatever we need on the town warrant and whatever articles we have to, you know, for you guys to move forward.
No, I have no issue.
I think we're good with that, the discussion of the draft. Number 3. Description, yeah.
3, yeah.
Number 4, old business.
The only thing that I can remember that is kind of hanging out there was a mission statement or some type of a paragraph that describes what we do. So, the last member that came on, Ron,
Valancourt.
he said that would have been nice to know what, or even Kelly said it. So if we can come up with some mission statement for the committee, I mean, that doesn't, not gonna cost the town any money, it just clarifies a little bit.
You guys were talking about doing a, thing on the Acton website, weren't you?
Yeah, I had mentioned that to Jennifer at some point, maybe moving forward if we were to, maybe once we start some of that work with a mission statement, following up, with Jen and the selectmen about possibility of putting some of the, committee's past work up on the website for people to see.
Sure.
So that there'd be a mission statement there'd be some pictures of what's been done and accomplished in the past, and maybe it would generate some new people, some new interest.
You know, we're working on doing a new website thing right now as we speak, so we're working on it, so, so that'd be nice if we can you guys get your mission statement and come up with an idea, something we might be able to put right on there.
Yeah.
Do we want to put, mission statement as an agenda item for next month's meeting?
I think we can probably go back to look at, like, for example, some of the other town stuff. There was obviously some sections that related to the regulation portions that wouldn't apply to this committee, but there's nothing that says that, like you said, all of the different, not to reinvent the wheel, but all of the other conservation commissions of other towns have a lot of the same overlapping goals. But if we started with that and then just worked backwards from it to take care of some of the language that implied a regulatory enforcement part of it, that's a good place to start. And I don't think that would take much. Andy's already given, it was Alfred that you gave us?
Alfred was a good one. I'd have to go back and pull them, but I looked at like 3 different towns that had,
I still have that paperwork too, so
Yeah.
I can go back and look at it, and if you want,
but Alfred has got an awesome page for that committee, and, you know, it's got,
They're a commission,
but they're a commission, that's what I'm saying,
different
so.
than a committee. So we just have to be careful that we
Right.
don't
Yeah,
roll
I'm
into
sure
that.
I'm sure the differences are probably some, you know, they probably got a little bit more power than this committee would have.
Well, that's the point, I'm
When
just
you
saying,
just
that's,
pull
if
that
we're
stuff
looking
out.
for, but if you're looking for a mission statement,
Yeah.
that language is probably embedded within that of that town as well. So, I mean, I can certainly go back and look at that, and if you want to give it as a homework assignment, so-called, between now and then,
Even if you could find some other towns, just pull a couple more.
I can pull a couple more and start circling and kind of do the same thing that we've done here, for that next
So,
meeting.
almost under what Steve sent out for job description, number 1 and number 2. You know, those could easily be part of the mission statement.
Oh, that the town sent out, 1 and 2? Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Yes, the town, I'm sorry.
Yep.
And the last one on Andy's, I mean, I think that's something that we could have as a goal as a committee rather than as a town forester.
Yeah,
Create a draft.
yeah, we can follow up, when we meet next month. We good to move on to number 5? New business?
Sounds good to me.
Has any more, thought been put into an ordinance for our committee? Or are
Yeah,
we
well, I think-
Getting through the process of the, job description first?
We were gonna do the job description for the forester, and then pretty much your mission statement, I thought, was gonna be kind of the same idea. It's gonna be kind of the same idea, wouldn't it? What the job, it's pretty much a job description of what you're gonna,
Yeah, I think we voted
Again, yeah, we had,
to concentrate on the mission statement rather than an ordinance.
Okay. It's been a while since we met, so, a
Yeah, probably when we do that.
couple,
a year
3
ago.
months ago. I don't know. Yeah, I mean.
I've got it written down because we have a secretary.
We ought to have an ordinance for every committee in town for what their duties are. We have them for the finance, road committee. I don't believe we have one for the capital improvement. I might be mistaken, but I don't remember seeing it. And, but at the end of the day, it's always good to have one of those, so you know exactly what your job is, but,
So how is that different from the mission statement then?
well, it's almost the same thing. Because when you do your mission statement, it's gonna tell, this is what your job description, what your goals are. So your goals are pretty much what your job description. Do you understand?
I understand what you're saying, but please educate me and tell me what it is.
I'm not educating
What does the
anybody.
what does the ordinance get you that a mission statement doesn't?
Because with
You
a,
can't do?
what's that?
Does it tell you what you can't do?
See, what an ordinance does, okay, say, I'll use the finance committee, okay? And the finance committee comes to the select board and say, I want this, and I want that, okay? And their ordinance specifically says what their job description is. To, work with the warrants that are set in front of them, okay? So that means, really, they don't have anything to do other than work on those warrant articles, okay? They can't be running off, creating a new form of government down of Acton, okay? I'm not saying that's what they're doing. I probably shouldn't be saying on TV, but I just have to use somebody for an example, and that was the easiest one. And so by doing the ordinance, if, say, this committee changes in 5 years, and there's a bunch of people on here who wanna do some crazy stuff, just keeps them in their lane, you know what I mean? Did I do it educated?
No, I'm understanding what you're saying, but I guess what I need clarification on is if our position is an advisory position to the select board,
Yeah,
then it would be redundant.
you may be right, but at the end of the day, by having a ordinance explaining exactly what this job is gonna be. So when whoever wants to be on this committee can look on and say, okay, this is, you can look at the mission statement too, I guess, does the same thing, but if you have individuals on a committee that what I like to call go rogue and go and do some, you have to be able to pull them in, and that's how you use the ordinance to do that. Mission statement's not gonna do that, okay? We can't pull anybody off a committee that goes rogue if we have no reason and why. And the ordinance allows us to do that. You know what I'm saying? Somebody goes,
Someone off of
somebody.
a committee.
Yes, you know, we would have to have some reason of why we're pulling, you know, but even though this is an elected committee, there is processes, but, you know, you have to have some sort of guidelines. And if somebody goes over those guidelines, stretches out, you know, say they're, going to government officials and something on behalf of the town of Acton without the committee knowing it, okay? On some really crazy stuff, which I'm not even gonna think of it right now what it is, but I'm just coming up with something, okay? Because Steve's got me on the hook here.
I'm not trying to grill you, other than to say that if the original reason that we thought about that statement
Yeah,
that Andy brought about was to say, no one who's coming here to join our committee knows what it is that we do.
So-
Having said that, that's the mission statement, not necessarily an ordinance.
So-
If there's something that an ordinance does for you, then maybe that's a different story.
I mean, there's nothing set in stone, you know, and I can't speak for the other two. There's nothing set in stone. Either way, it's whatever the committee, you know, if the committee wants to decide that's the way they want to go, then, you know, fine, we'll do that.
So does
We
the-
haven't had any concerns of late where, you know, I've worried about an ordinance, but like I said, with other committees and some of the stuff that's happened.
So do other I'm not trying to sidetrack you, but, so do other committees have authority, I'm presuming that they do, like, for example, planning boards or Warren and Finance, that this committee does not have? That, I would presume the answer is yes, and therefore, then they need more control.
You can make an argument that this
than these
committee
two
right now
guys.
has more, they can do more of their meetings than, say, the finance committee. Because if you go by the ordinance, the finance committee is supposed to be doing this, this, and that. They might be doing other stuff, but if you go by the ordinance, they're supposed to be doing this, this, and that. You guys have nothing telling you you have to do this, this, and that. You can do it, right now, you can pretty much do whatever you want.
Right, I mean, an ordinance would actually limit that ability to stray, if you will. And it also, gives you detailed procedures for certain things.
Like what?
Pretty much it lays everything out for you as far as what your responsibilities are, how the meetings are held, number of members on the committee.
Well, we have that in the Warren articles already, though.
Yeah, but it's,
I don't believe there's anything saying how many has to be on the committee, is there?
Yep.
On the article?
The committee shall have X numbers of people, numbers of terms. Forester shall
Yes,
be
you're
on
right, because
committee.
when we swapped that over, we merged them together, I guess we did reword that, didn't we?
Well, again, I'm not against it in theory, I'm just saying in practice, it's kind of not really giving us anything. If we don't have authority to do anything, then going rogue isn't really a thing that you need to be worried about of us.
Well, no, you guys have, when I say authority, you guys don't have any authority anyways. I mean, you're
Well, that's my
volunteers.
point, though, yeah.
Nobody has any authority, but the select board and the town have to have some sort of guidelines to make sure that you're not doing stuff that you should not be doing, okay? So saying we don't have an ordinance, what shouldn't you not be doing? We don't know. So it gives you a scope of your job. That's the only thing. That's the only good thing about the ordinance. We don't have a policy where we don't have, the committees don't have to have an ordinance. We're not making everybody get an ordinance at this point. Nobody said you have to have an ordinance. If you feel that doing one is a good thing for your committee at this point, fine. We're not out chasing around a committee saying we gotta do ordinances for this and that. Unless something goes awry, which happened back in the day, back when we did the road committee ordinance. We had to do that because things went awry. Okay.
I would presume, maybe you correct me if I'm wrong, the town has authority to do that already anyway, do they not? I mean, I know that you would rather have it,
It's nothing saying, you know, that you guys aren't doing your job, because there's nothing saying what your job really is.
I would.
Doing a great job.
You're doing a great job. This guy had.
Way to go, Mike.
He had the forestry thing done.
That's right.
In 15 minutes without our help.
I'm beating a dead horse, but
Yeah.
I think you understand my point. If an ordinance actually gets us something and mitigates risk, then at least there could be some merit. But for the sake of a job description for people who might come to this committee, it certainly has no merit.
Where a job description, where the ordinance would actually benefit you was what we were just talking about with the financial stuff, okay? Like the capital improvement doesn't have an ordinance, but they send us the things with, they want to put a warrant article on. Well, there's nothing saying they have the right to do that. We typically don't have committees throwing warrant articles at us, okay? But we threw it on anyways, where if you did an ordinance where it allows this committee to put forward a budget or a warrant article to the select board to put on the warrant.
Well, that's essentially what, I mean, if we need boundary lines run, or we need a road improvement, that's gonna cost money. You guys, the board,
But nothing gives you the authority to actually give us a budget for that. Okay? So by.
We are your advisors. Why
we're
would-
advising you
Exactly,
to,
But at the same time, you're putting a budget together. Who's spending the money? It would be us. We would be spending the money at your advisement. You're correct. But if you had an ordinance where it says, you know, that you're allowed to, put forward articles for such and such projects, okay? I think it'd be cleaner.
I mean, I would rather go at it with a proactive approach rather than get to a point where you can't go any further without an ordinance.
And that could happen. You know, I've seen it happen to committees where there just wasn't the structure there of, you know, 2 lanes. But, I mean, we can discuss that, you know. I haven't really discussed it with the other 2 selectmen, anything about an ordinance, so I can discuss it with them and, but, I mean, we're making strides. We've got we've got some sort of plan already going ahead.
So we don't have, just to encapsulate that for future business within the near future, which is to say within the next, say, 6 months. You don't currently have a requirement that we have one. There's nothing that says that we can't continue to do business in whatever
guys
other
continue
form
doing
that we need
business.
to do business. It doesn't have to be that we don't do anything until this thing that may or may not be needed is created, correct?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the select board will let you know if we think you have to have an ordinance, you know? That might be a decision that we would have to make anyways, because,
Does that go before the town meeting?
well, the ordinance would have to.
Yeah.
We would have to have it on a warrant article and put it to the town meeting anyways. So, but it would probably be better off that we did the ordinance. We wouldn't want you doing that anyways, so.
Again, we can see how it goes. Again, my personal thought is I think it's redundant and
I think.
for those who don't have authority, there is nothing to go rogue with, but again, that's the function of the group.
But as this committee should grow, I would hope, there should be a committee that, you know, people, there's a lot of people in town that really like conservation, you know, really into trail hiking, this and that. You would think there'd be a line out that door wanting to be on this committee to start making trails and this and that, and that's really what it should be. But at some point in time, you know, when you start doing projects where there's actually money being spent, stuff like that, you know, having an ordinance to make sure that everything is black and white, I don't think would hurt. I don't think it would hurt at all, because over in time, I believe this committee could, you know, get larger and more useful than it already is.
Well, that's a good segue, actually. We are currently 5 out of 7. Do we have anybody, or is there anything active that's happening to try to, maybe that's a website thing? I don't know how Jen puts that out
When
there.
you know, we've got our, the website, guys, the people bidding on it, this and that. I think that's something we really ought to push, because, I mean, we're looking for people on the planning board also. we're not filling those positions either. So, you know, we just gotta get the word out, and I think the website.
Well, and again, to Andy's point from before, if the mission statement doesn't seem to be too long in the tooth, and can come within a couple of months, and I don't see why it wouldn't,
Yeah.
then by the time the website comes up and comes around, that can be the job description for those that you're trying to
Well,
solicit.
you guys start with your mission statement, and we can work on the other stuff as we go. You know, I mean, that's, you know, don't do it all at once anyways. I like to see, I like to see.
The point of
committee.
having 5 people with 1 or 2 that may not be able to come to any given meeting is obviously quorum.
No, it's
problem.
tough, it's tough. You know, we're having the same problem with other committees. So, I'd like to see you guys get ready, you know, start working on some projects, be able to start moving forward. Be kinda cool.
The ordinance, does that get reviewed by anybody other than the selectmen?
We
Does that
send
go
all
to-
the ordinances out to the lawyers to make sure that, you know, because, you know, we have one word that's MMA, we do send it to MMA, and, you know, because, you know, it only takes one word to make something a gray area, you know? So,
Does warrant and finance weigh in on that when they review the, town warrant?
yeah, they go over every town article in the warrant. So they would.
But they just vote up or down.
Right.
and Recommend to the town.
To their ordinance, yeah.
Right. I mean, when I looked at the warrants at the last town meeting, the finance committee was 3-1 or whatever it was, and you guys were 3-0, and somebody else was 0-3, and
Yep.
they're just offering their opinion for the town.
They're just an advisement.
Yeah.
They advise town meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, and we also, you know, we make our advisements to the town meeting, but we're putting forward our own, so.
Right.
We beat that to death, we good?
Oh, I was just gonna say that, it occurred to me, if you haven't done it already, Andy, I know with some of your research, maybe you already have, but I don't know that that wouldn't be looked at pretty quickly, if not already exists somewhere else within Southern Maine Regional Planning Committee,
What are you talking about?
the ordinance.
Oh, I'm sure there is.
I mean, those guys are the ones who essentially wrote or write towns' comp plans. So if that's the case, and they're listing things like this job description should be part of a conservation committee / commission, and that should be part of planning board, right from the old town comp plan, then that almost tells me that they should probably, if they know what a conservation commission is, that they're recommending to do this work, that they have a definition of what that should be.
Perfect.
So maybe that's a pretty quick place to start. Mission statement.
Anything else under new business? Do we want to set a date for the January meeting? Be January 9th? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Is that, I don't have a calendar in front of me, is that the same second Monday scenario?
It is.
Okay.
The 16th is Martin Luther King Day, and the 2nd would be the day after New Year's. So,
So we'll set it for January 9th.
6 o'clock?
Yep.
You got that, Kelly?
she's asleep.
She's sleeping.
Disconnect.
No, she hung up on me. Smart girl.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
4-0.